All right, Liz, by all means, go right ahead and give us a quick intro to Alex and Celsius.
All right. Hi, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce the founder and CEO of Celsius, Alex Mashinsky. Celsius was founded or launched in 2017, and the mission and vision of the company really hasn't changed from then to now. And that is to bring an unparalleled economic freedom into the hands of people. And they do that by providing weekly rewards on crypto assets with zero fees and low interest rates on loans against users' crypto holdings. So with that, I don't want to give away any more of the sweet sauce and what Alex has been up to, and I'll hand it over to him.
Yeah, thanks, Liz, Howard, and Nick. Thanks for having me. And I'll do a quick kind of overview of what is our mission, what we created, and why it's important. So if you think of Bitcoin as this exceptional store of value, right? It's been the top performing assets almost every year for the last 12 years. A lot of people are basically looking for an additional use case or a killer app for cryptocurrencies. And even though we've seen Ethereum come up with a smart contract, and there's a lot of experimentation going on with NFTs and security tokens and all kind of other stuff, we haven't really found a second killer app. So what Celsius focused on in 2017 was really creating this opportunity to create yield for crypto, right? And Celsius was the first company to enable you to earn Bitcoin on your Bitcoin or Ethereum on your Ethereum. And today we support 45 different assets that are listed on our app. So you just go to the App Store, you download this wallet, and you transfer your coins from Coinbase or Binance or wherever you're storing them, and they immediately start earning Bitcoin on your Bitcoin, right? And so that yield, which is now so scarce, is so difficult to come by in the banking world or in the traditional finance world, has proven itself as really the second killer app. So if you're thinking of DeFi, a year and a half before any DeFi company, Celsius was the first one to create that. Today, we manage just over $10 billion. So we by far are the largest player in the space. We have close to 500,000 customers, and we paid over $375 million worth of interest in all these forms of coins. So why is that important? Why is yield such an important element of the future, right, of the decentralized financial system? So today, if you look at central banks all over the world, you will see that all of them are either already at zero or negative rates, and the ones that are not are basically heading there because they're trying to effectively reflate or refinance their financial system, and at the same time, unfortunately, they have to debase their currencies. That's the only way that they can manage basically the corona crisis, the financial crisis that we've went through in the last several years. And all of that is forcing our traditional financial systems, like the insurance companies, the banks, the financial institutions, to not be able to actually fulfill their obligations, because it's basically impossible to get at yield. And if you want to earn any yield, you have to take excessive risk to get there. Now, the crypto world today is effectively disconnected from the traditional finance world. And because of that, it is effectively starving for dollars. And because it's starving for dollars, the ability to generate yield is actually dramatically better or higher in the crypto world than it is in a traditional finance. So routinely, if you look at projects like ours, like Celsius Network or Compound or Aave, you will see rates anywhere between 12 and 18% being paid for dollars, because the velocity of the dollars on the traditional platforms is dramatically lower than it is in crypto. The ratio is actually 20-1, meaning the same dollar will do 20 times more work, or will change hand 20 times more than it will in traditional finance. So because of that, a company like ours is now valued at several $billion. And there's a lot of basically smart investors and uh, um, people basically chasing both the equity side and the yield side of what we're doing. So Celsius has been doing this longer, as I mentioned, longer than anyone else, paid interest more than anyone else. Very simple interface. You just deposit your assets. You can withdraw them at any time. There's no lockup or anything else. Most of our competitors require you to be an expert both in the DeFi space, do what's called farming or mining, and really hop between many, many different projects. This morning, for example, moving on the Ethereum network cost $800 for one transaction. And many times you have to do 5 or 6 hops to really extract that yield. So the reason Celsius can do that while most people are not being able to do it themselves is that we're deploying in each transaction we do is in the tens of millions of dollars. And so even those high rates on Ethereum today are still generating that double-digit yield that we talked about before. So really, this is a three-man horse race, right? You have effectively the open public blockchain, the open ledger, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum are great examples of it. And they're competing against corporate versions. So if you look at JP Morgan having their own blockchain, you look at Facebook coming up with their own blockchain, and now you're seeing CBDCs or the central bank digital currencies like the Chinese yuan or the European Union is working on one, or the digital dollars. Those are all three different implementations, all competing with each other for effectively dominance of the future of finance. And the big difference between what Celsius is working on, what Ethereum is working on, is that almost all of the products that exist in our universe are limited supply, meaning, for example, the inflation of Bitcoin is about 1.8% a year. That's the additional Bitcoin that is being created. The inflation of Celsius is 0%. And last year, the best performing token worldwide was Celsius Network, up over 3,700%, because our assets increased so much. And at the same time, the number of token has not changed, right? So there was basically much more earnings or much more income being distributed over the same number of token. So this type of economic or unique economics only exists in the crypto space, in the open ledger, right? Neither the Chinese government or any of the other CBDCs, nor the corporate providers are planning to limit their supply, meaning it's going to look just like fiat. It's just going to happen to run on this or that blockchain, but it's not going to be a limited supply venture like Bitcoin or Ethereum is. So basically, we are proponents of the public blockchain, of decentralization, of basically allowing the community, the developer community, the financial community to continue developing its own infrastructure instead of it being mandated or dictated by governments or by large corporations. And we think that that design is really the right way to effectively scale and deliver the future of finance. On top of that, we need to build bridges between DeFi and CeFi, between decentralized finance and centralized finance, so we can enable both the people and the institutions to migrate and transact on both sides of the equation. Today, it's very difficult for large banks or financial institutions to operate on the DeFi side, because a lot of the stuff they use to KYC, AML, all the procedures that normally people have are not really applicable, or they don't translate from the traditional world to the DeFi world. What Celsius has built is really a variety of bridges that enable traditional institutions to operate on both sides while staying fully compliant with all of the requirements. So those are the things that we've done better than most. We've been doing it for a while. And as I said, today, with over 10 billion in assets, we're adding between $600 and $700 a month organically. These are deposits that are coming from retail, corporate, and institutions. And today we operate with about 350 institutions worldwide, some of the largest companies in the world. And all of them are effectively are both utilizing the platforms and deploying assets to create yield and opportunities that they cannot access in their traditional financial world. So that's the short version of Celsius. I don't know if we have a room for any questions, but I wanted to give a quick overview.
That was great, Alex. We do have room for some questions, and I wonder if I could just throw in a couple if we're waiting for the audience to raise questions. So one of the things I was struck by when I first spoke to you was that you have both a lot of retail customers and institutional customers, as I recall. Can you give a little bit of a description, a more detailed description of the types of institutional customers you have? And then also talk a little bit more about how you're building those bridges to the traditional financial services community, the finance community, because that was a big subject of discussion this morning about how the relationship between the crypto world and the traditional finance world is going to evolve. You know, the crypto world is growing so fast. The traditional world is moving they're moving into crypto, but not that fast. So it could be, I mean, are we going to have a Tesla-like situation where some of the one or more of the new players are going to get really big really fast, or are the traditional banks going to buy up some of the players, or what do you think is going to happen? So really two questions.
Right. No, that's a great question. And so our mixture of, again, 450,000 retail users. These are our average wallet size is something like $35,000. So we have a mix of whales and small users. Several hundred corporates, or something like 600 corporates. Some of them are mega companies with billion-dollar valuations who have committed to crypto or digital assets, and they just want to earn yield on those assets. And institutions, most of the institutions we work with are traditional players that transact on Wall Street or on different markets around the world, who have a crypto desk. So they normally have a Bitcoin or Ethereum desk that is dedicated to those transactions, and they rather borrow the assets instead of taking directional bets. So because, like today, just during today, Bitcoin moved over 25% in one day, right? It happens that it moved down, but my point is that at any time, the gap, and these are two exchanges that are actually physically located next to each other, Kraken and Coinbase. The gap between those two exchanges was over 7%. So all day long, you could buy and sell between Coinbase and Kraken, not even go offshore, and capture 7% yield. That's more than most financial institutions will earn for the entire year on high frequency trading or anything like that. So basically, because the markets are so volatile, because the opportunities are so wide, these institutions basically borrow the assets rather than buy them. Instead of committing their dollars into Bitcoin and then getting hit with that price gap, they borrow the asset from us. They pay yield to our community. Our community is long only. They are long-term holders. They don't care what happens every day. And because of that, they rather capture the yield and offset the risk for the institutions. And the second question was, sorry, second part of the question.
The second question was really how you see this whole competitive landscape unfolding, given how the different speeds that people are proceeding at.
Right. So normally you would basically be chasing the leader, right? So if you're you're trying to compete with Tesla, you have to build your own batteries, you have to build your own car, you have to get distribution, right? Tesla does not have any car dealers, so they completely, fully vertically integrated the whole experience. In the crypto space, there are a lot of other barriers. So for example, today I mentioned that the transaction on Ethereum was $800 because the speed of the entire network is only 13 to 15 transactions a minute. And because of that, you cannot really transact at the speeds that you're used to. So that gives the traditional guys, the incumbents, actually much more time or bigger opportunity to catch up with the innovators. So it doesn't matter if you are the top leader, like we are the leader or the top dog in yield creation, but because we are limited by the speed of the Bitcoin network, by the speed of the Ethereum network, and we cannot scale our business 100x because we will be hitting those limits of transaction on the network. So I think, and I've said this publicly several times, I think that the winning blockchain has not been invented yet, and we are transitioning. We're going to transition just like we went from Internet 1.0 to 2.0 and then 3.0. The same way here, we are yet to transition to that mass adoption version that actually going to solve this. So institutions have an opportunity, but they are slow-moving animals, right? The joke about the banks is that the last thing they invented was the ATM machine, you know. So they will really have to transform their business to enable, support, and encourage innovation inside their companies. Today, if you work for JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs and you come and you say, I have a DeFi idea, you get fired on the spot. You don't get a budget and a team of people to go and pursue your dreams. So, and most of the people who operate today in DeFi did not come from the traditional financial institutions.
We have one question in the audience that we might have time for. James, can you turn on Tim Fitzpatrick? Maybe Tim, do you want to ask your question live? Are we able to get Tim? If not, I'll read the question.
He's coming on right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you are. You're on.
Right. It looks very, very interesting technology. You know, you've made a choice to kind of have a fixed number of coins or assets, and that has a disinflationary effect. I wonder if that limits in any way the adoption because it's got a bit of a pre-built disinflationary effect. Do you think as you get users adopting this more and more and more, that you run into a bit of a bias towards the kind of creditors in the system rather than the users or borrowers?
So yeah, so in traditional finance, like with the US dollar, it doesn't really make any difference if you're the first one or the middle one or the last one. Actually, again, because there's so many dollars being printed, you almost don't want to be there from the beginning because you're getting most of the dilution. In crypto, and this is the first time this happened in history, the average Joe, the average person is in on the next big thing before Goldman Sachs, before Morgan Stanley, right? So the fact that there's limited supply actually allows you, like when Elon Musk bought $1.5 billion worth of Tesla worth of Bitcoin, he bought it from retail holders. He didn't go and buy it from Goldman Sachs, right? So here, being in first, sitting on your hands, not doing anything, as long as there's mass adoption, as long as the entire user base is growing, is a good thing. Same thing with Celsius, same thing with Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything else. So the protocols themselves are built in a way that if you can get, because Celsius is growing so fast, our token performance is attached to the growth of the community. So if our community grew 100x, our token price will probably grow in the same ratio because it's a directly correlated performance.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's almost the inverse, right? Where early adopters gain kind of a bit of a wealth transfer as the user base expands. The people who came in early kind of have to be paid for that deflationary effect.
That's right, and here, because we're creating yield, you can almost do DCF or discounted cash flow on the business model and say, okay, well, here's how much they're adding. This is the yield that they're creating, and you can almost create this discounted cash flow projection of what the token is going to perform. We operate at a set formula. We, meaning Celsius, is distributing 80% of what we create in yield to the community. You know exactly how much we have in assets. You know, we publish every week the yield, the percentage of yield that is applies to each coin. So this is again a bot or a computer can run that very easily because almost all the data is available and can be calculated. So it's almost impossible to do the same thing in traditional finance where you have so many different variables and the network is really dependent on what people think about this or that asset much more than the actual performance of the asset.